The American Legion, Ralph L. Bersandi, Post 265, is recording a video series of Anderson Island veterans describing their military service experience. This video documents Bruce MacPherson's military service experience. Thank you, Bruce, for your willingness to share your experience.
Thank you, Ray.
You're welcome.
My name is Bruce MacPherson, and I was serving in the United States Navy from 1977 until 1981 with an honorable discharge. I have three other brothers who have served in the Navy as well. One being a commander in the United States Navy, and my other three brothers were enlisted. I went into the Navy right after, about 3 months right after graduating from high school. I was probably a below average student at the time, really didn't have a lot of direction on what I wanted to do. I knew I definitely wasn't college material at that time, so I followed my two older brothers' footsteps by joining the Navy. Spent, I think, about 12 weeks, a long time in Navy boot camp in San Diego. During that time, I volunteered for the submarine force, was accepted, and I think partly because one of my brothers had served on the USS Gudgeon. I liked the hazardous duty pay, which I think paid about $50 extra a month. So I joined, and I was accepted. I flew straight from boot camp graduation to Groton, Connecticut. And I think I was there for maybe 2 months. I'm not really sure how long, but because I wasn't a really strong student in school, I struggled in Navy in submarine school, but I did graduate nonetheless. I think what got me through it was just a lot of hard work, memorization, and just grit. This is something I wanted, something I didn't want to fail in. So I did graduate, came home, spent maybe a week or two at home, eating my mom's good cooking, and then shortly after that reported aboard the USS Sailfish out of San Diego, the SS 572, which was a diesel boat. That boat was unique in the fact that there were a lot of senior, almost top-heavy enlisted guys on that boat. They were slowly decommissioning the diesel boats at the time and going more towards the fast attack nuclear sub. So being on a diesel boat was quite a challenge in the fact that I was one of the most junior guys on that boat, along with maybe 3 or 4 other guys as well. The thing about being on board, I wasn't qualified, wasn't submarine qualified. I was a striker, I didn't have a rate. I think I reported aboard maybe an E2 or an E. I reported aboard as an E2.
What's a striker?
It means I didn't have a rating. I wasn't a torpedo man, I wasn't a machinist mate. I was just a deckhand is what I was, which is good and bad. The good part is because you're doing a lot of manual work, sometimes chipping paint or painting or cleaning, just doing stuff that a junior guy would do without any skills. I didn't have a skill set. The good part about that is I got to know that boat inside out. I mean, I was crawling all over through the superstructure, all through there, where maybe if I had a rating, I wouldn't be doing that, I'd be doing something else. So I got to know that boat quite well. I don't know if you knew this or not, but it takes about nine months, maybe 10 months to get qualified on that boat. And what that means is you go through a series of steps, learning basically damage control on how to handle yourself during a fire or flooding or something like that. It's quite intense. Again, because growing up I really didn't know how to study. Everything came hard to me. Where maybe some guys were studying 5 days a week, I was studying 6 days a week. But I didn't know any better. So to get qualified is pretty intense. You're part of the crew, but you're really not part of the crew because you don't earn your dolphins. These are my Submariner dolphins right here. So it took me 9.5 months, 10 months to go through these systems. And to be non-qualified means a lot of things. It means you can't read anything for enjoyment. You can't watch movies. You can't do anything because your sole focus is to get qualified, to get a signature on a certain damage control equipment, like hydraulics or just the ship's characteristics. So you're even the last person to eat on board. You don't have your own rack or sleeping quarters, and what the significance of that is that's the only privacy you have on that boat is your own rack or your bunk with a curtain, and that's your world right there. That's the only time you have. Well, you don't even get that. You hot bunk with another non-qual. A non-qual is non-qualification. So even if there's an extra bunk, you still can't have your own bunk. You have to sleep on that hot racking is what they call it. You have to share that bunk with somebody else. Not at the same time. So
What's the difference between a striker and a non-qual?
well,
Is there?
you can be a striker, you can be a quartermaster, you can be a torpedo man, you can be an auxiliary man, but still not be qualified. Qualified means earning these dolphins, these submariner dolphins. That's what means qualified, and it makes a big difference, and I'll share that with you here. But so at the time, I thought, this is so unfair. This isn't right. And I was 19 at the time, and I'm thinking this isn't right. And the whole thing, and complaining to myself, only to slowly realize that everybody after me had done the same exact thing. It's not meant to punish you, it's to get you qualified. It's an incentive to get you qualified, because once you're qualified, you're part of the crew. And that's what the whole thing is about. It's not harassment, I don't know how they do it now on a submarine, but probably is the incentive is the same. So, again, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. It was a lot of work, and it's probably one of the most proudest moments I had when I did get qualified. I went before a board, 2 chiefs, maybe 3 second class or first class, and maybe a senior chief and a junior officer. And they'll grill you for a good hour, hour and a half, and it's a lot of stress, because if you don't get it, then you have to almost requalify again according to what you don't know. I didn't know at the time that they give you can fail it twice, and if you fail it the second time, they'll kick you out. And I know one guy that did. He did not make it, and I've known this guy for 9 months or so. We almost reported aboard at the same time. He didn't make it, and they didn't tell me he didn't make it until after the fact, because I think they didn't want to stress me out over that. But I made it, and it was probably one of the most. I haven't been that elated. I'll be 65 this year, and that's besides getting married to my wife. That was one of the most proudest moments in my life. It really was. A lot of guys that got their dolphins were cocky, they were arrogant. For me, it was just a relief. I got my dolphin. So what does that mean? Well, to begin with, I was qualified. A week later, they decommissioned that boat. And had I not qualified, or had I been a week late, I would have had to start all over again on another boat. All that work just to start again. So I had an incentive to qualify. Not to belabor the point, but when guys were going home at after 5 or after 6, I was there till 9 o'clock at 10 o'clock at night, working on my qualifications. So you do your ship's work, you do your work during the day, and then when everybody goes home, you're working on your qualifications. So I did qualify. Extremely, I just was very humbled by the whole process. So fast forward, I got my orders to serve aboard the USS Puffer, which is a fast attack nuclear submarine, sturgeon class, out of Pearl Harbor. report on board with my sea bag, wearing my dolphins. Instant respect, instant respect. It's like, welcome aboard. None of this non-qual. I didn't have a name for 9 months. I was non-qual. I wasn't MacPherson, I wasn't Mac, I wasn't Bruce, I wasn't any of that. I was non-qual was my name. So now I had a name, but I didn't have a rate. I was still a non-rate, which means I didn't have a job, but I did have my dolphins. And so sat down with the navigator, and my older brother was a quartermaster, and I always had an interest in that because he'd send me a chart or some pennants or something. But I always had an interest in being a quartermaster, and you never got dirty. It's just cleaned up. So spoke with the navigator. He was a lieutenant at the time, and told him I wanted to be a quartermaster, and there just happened to be an opening for that position. So a quartermaster has to do with, you're working with charts and you're keeping track of where the boat is. You're working in the control room, which is kind of the nerve center of the boat. It's a job it's interesting because you always know where you are. You always know what you're going to do, which is, some guys didn't care, but I always want to know what was going on. You're kind of like the right-hand man for the officer of the deck or the captain. One thing I remember about that job that I couldn't do now is you had to be fast and you had to be accurate. And I picked that up right away, and I think I did because I had an interest in doing it. Made some mistakes along the way, but I didn't go to school. It was all on-the-job training. I did that on-the-job training for a solid month, almost port and starboard, 8 hours on, 8 hours off, because I wanted that, and that's how I'm going to advance. So I was a striker. I stood quartermaster watch. I took to it, and I was not to be bragging, but I was good at it, and that's something that I excelled in. So my first watch, I remember quite clearly. I felt like I didn't know everything, which is probably a good way to go as far as not being arrogant. I knew what I knew and I didn't know, but I gradually picked it up. Started reading books, Dutton's navigation. I learned how to navigate. I learned how to use all the equipment that you would use using chart work. And because I had a rate, I was able to advance. I made E4, which is petty officer, 3rd class. And just did everything right. I kept out of trouble, which isn't, I never got out of trouble anyway, or at least the stuff that I didn't get caught with. But advanced to E5, extremely proud of that. And I went from being what's called the maneuvering watch to being a bearing recorder, recording stuff as far as navigation, to actually working with the being on the chart, getting from out of Pearl Harbor out into the ocean. And again, they lay a track line on a chart, and you have to lay that out, and they make a turn, but turns off, so you have to get them back on. And that's something you have to be pretty quick at too. And the first times I did that, the navigator was yelling because he was all jacked up, and he was probably, I don't know, probably in his late 20s, and he was a young guy too. I thought he was an old man, but he wasn't. I just remember him yelling at me a few times, 2 or 3 times, because I wasn't fast enough. But it was stressful, but at the same time, he didn't really apologize, but he said, "You can do better." He said, "You can do much better. You're a 2nd class quartermaster. Just hang in there, and you're going to do better next time." And I said I would. And eventually I did, and then I look back on that, and I don't know what I was so nervous about, but I was, because I wanted to do a good job. So I made it, and some of the guys came and went, on the boat, and I just remember when it was my turn to get out, it was a tough decision because the XO and the captain and the navigator, all 3 of them were really even the chief of the boat, the senior enlisted guy, said, you know, you have a future here. You know, you could be a leading petty officer at the time, you know, which you can be in charge of your own gang, you know, is what they were saying. If I had to do it over again, and if I just had if I thought a little bit more clearly, instead of being 21 or 22, I probably would have stayed in. That's one of the few jobs that, or careers I had that I truly enjoyed. It's something, being on a boat like that, you're working, it's just maybe in the Navy in general, you know, at least where I was that you're working as a team, you're working you have a common goal. And that's never really been replicated in the civilian world. And I don't have too many regrets in my life, but if Rick had stayed in the Navy or my brother Randy had stayed in the Navy, I probably would have too, I don't know. But I did get out, did some other things, one of them being I went to college at Arizona State, and I got to tell you, after qualifying on a boat, on a submarine, college was a piece of cake. I mean, I had no problem staying up at any hour of the time of day to work on my degree. I guess any other questions?
What did you major in?
I majored in business and with a minor in political science, and what I was going to do with that degree, I don't know, but I just something I enjoyed, so I did it.
Were there any mishaps or big happenings, any major events that you can remember? Or did everything run fairly smoothly?
We did, and all submarines have something going on, even ships at sea. Going to sea is dangerous. It really is. You don't think about it at that age, but people get hurt. People, in extreme cases, get killed. Going to sea is dangerous, and there's a lot of fatigue. When you're out at sea, I just remember you're always tired. You know, you sleep well, but you go to bed tired, you get up tired. And I don't know if it's just the environment or just the work. You know, Kathleen, my wife, will say, well, how can you sleep standing up? And I learned that in the Navy. I can do it, you know, cat napping or whatever. But yeah, there were some, you think, you know, being on a sub, the worst thing that can happen on a sub is flooding, which is not a good thing. But the thing that was the scariest, and we had two onboard fires. One was a grease fire in the galley, and one was in the laundry, the dryer. And you know, you train for that, and you know, you sometimes you get an alarm, you don't know if it's real or not. So it's just automatic, you know what to do during a ship fire. But we had two fires on board, and that scared me, because you can start smelling the smoke, and you can see it.
Were you above water at that time or below?
Well, we're below, and so there's maneuvers where you come up, you know, you clear your baffles, which cause you to make a slow 360-degree turn on the sub, because a submarine can't hear what's behind it, so you don't know if you're being tailed by another sub or not. So you know, and then you come up to periscope depth, and then you make turns to snorkel and exhaust the smoke. And so we did that, you know, and everything, nothing happened obviously because I'm here, but I just remember seeing some smoke or the fire. I didn't see the fire, but I could smell it, and you could see this grease fire, the smoke or whatever coming up into the control room, and that was scary. We've had some near collisions. We had almost had a collision underwater with another sub. There was a pucker factor there, and when you're tailing, and a lot of the stuff I was privy to because I'm a quartermaster, so I knew what was going on, and I'm recording everything. And we were trailing a sub, and all of a sudden, kind of like at a science, or kind of like a movie, like Red October, there, we lost it, but we were close. But we didn't know if it was below us or next to us or where it was, and that was, I kept waiting for a bump. I was waiting to hear something, but nothing happened, and I don't know. They got away from us, I don't know. But so, yeah, I mean, that's one of many sea stories that I have, you know, but it was also exhilarating too, you know, a lot of adrenaline going. Most of it's pretty boring.
So when did you get out? What time roughly?
I got out July 14th, 1981. That's my sister-in-law's birthday. And so I had a lot of good memories from my sister-in-law too. She was a flight attendant, and every once in a while she would fly into Pearl Harbor, or not Pearl Harbor, but the airport there in Honolulu. So she would call me, and we'd always meet. I'd catch the bus. First of all, I'd have to get off the boat, you know, and get cleaned up, you know, and then I'd catch the bus, and we'd go to this Chinese, or was it some Chinese restaurant there in the Alamo Auto Center, and so we'd meet. And it was so fun to see her, you know, to my sister-in-law, and I didn't get a chance to go to my brother and sister-in-law's wedding. But it was always a really sweet memory just having her there. We'd be sitting on this bench just eating food, getting caught up what we were going to do. And aside from my brother, she's probably the one that knows me the longest. So.
Well, Bruce, thank you for your service for the country, and
Yeah.
thank you for the interview.
Well, thank you, and thank you for recording me for posterity. It's I just say that I always remember. I'm always so very thankful that I had someone to follow through with my brothers, Rick and Randy. Rick followed a friend or a guy down the street that we knew who was in the Navy, so Rick kind of followed him. I think on his, based on what our neighbor friend had told Rick. So I am so grateful that I was able to follow my brother's footsteps. I'm also grateful that I didn't let my family down. I didn't let our country down. I did what was expected of me. And I'm eternally grateful for what the United States Navy offered me.
Okay, thank you.